She nearly dropped the bullet. Agon, 3 tries to load the damn rifle. Her fingers slick with sweat despite the November cold. Breathe, she whispered to herself. Just breathe. Behind her, Ivy Carwell was sobbing in the locked bedroom. The same bedroom Willa had hidden in 3 years ago, when she was the one being hunted. In front of her, dust rose on the horizon. 6 riders, maybe 7, coming fast, coming for Ivy, coming for a fight. From the barn, Silas was shouting something. She didn't turn. There wasn't time. She slammed the bolt home, checked the chamber, still trying, grabbed 2 more boxes of ammunition from the shelf and shoved them in her apron pockets. Her wedding dress had pockets too. 3 years ago, the yellowed cotton thing she'd worn down the aisle alone. She'd burned it last winter. Watched it turn to ash in the stove. The girl who wore that dress would be hiding right now, praying, hoping the men would solve it. That girl was dead. Willa kicked open the front door, stepped onto the porch, planted her boots shoulder-width apart the way Silas had taught her, the way he'd taught her everything: how to stand, how to aim, how to breathe through the fear, how to choose. The riders were close enough now. She could see Dalton Carwell's face. Furious, his hand already on his gun. She didn't wait for him to speak. Aimed at the fence post to his left, pulled the trigger. The crack split the air. The post exploded in splinters. One of the men's horses reared. He nearly fell. Next one goes through your knee. She worked the bolt, ejected the shell, chambered another round, smooth, fast, the way Silas had drilled her until her hands remembered even when her mind forgot. Then your friend's knee. Then his. I've got 17 more bullets, and you're bunched up real nice. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Funny how that worked. But to understand how a bought bride became a woman holding a rifle, how a girl sold for $2,100 learned to shoot straight and stand her ground. We need to go back 3 years, back to the church that smelled like old wood and judgment, back to the wedding, which smelled like old wood and judgment. Willa walked down the aisle alone. Her father had disappeared that morning, too drunk or too ashamed to face what he'd arranged. Maybe both. Every pew was full. The whole town of Bitter Creek had turned out, still trying, and not one face looked happy for her. Mrs. Patterson whispered behind her fan. The Miller boys snickered in the back row. Even Pastor Green looked uncomfortable. His Bible held like a shield against something he didn't quite approve of but wouldn't refuse. At the altar stood Silas Thorne, 6'3" of lean muscle and sun-darkened skin, dressed in what was probably his only clean shirt, dark hair slicked back, still damp. He'd shaved, but there was a nick on his jaw where he'd cut himself. His hands hung awkward at his sides. And he wouldn't meet her eyes. He looked as miserable as she felt, which was something. At least, dearly beloved, Pastor Green began. His voice lacking conviction, Willa barely heard the words. Her mind was screaming, calculating, searching for an exit that didn't exist. The bank held the papers. Silas had paid $2,100, a staggering sum to clear her family's debt, still trying. In exchange, her father had promised her hand in marriage, so that was the word no one would say out loud, but everyone thought. Do you, Silas Thorne, take this woman? I do. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. And do you, Willa Brennan? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. Pastor Green's eyebrows rose. Silas finally looked at her, and his expression was unreadable. Not angry, not impatient, just waiting. What choice did she have? Still trying. I do, she whispered. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride. Silas's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, and Willa's whole body went rigid, but he didn't grab her. Didn't claim her mouth, like she'd seen other grooms do. Instead, he leaned down and pressed the briefest kiss to her forehead. The kind you'd give a child, or a sister. Then he stepped back. It's done, he said quietly. To the pastor more than to her. Outside, a wagon waited. Not a fancy carriage, just a working ranch wagon with a patched canvas cover and 2 sturdy horses. Silas's whole life apparently was practical and plain. This is it? The words slipped out before Willa could stop them. Silas paused, one hand on the wagon. Were you expecting something else? I don't know what I was expecting. He nodded slowly. Like that made sense to him. Then he held out his hand to help her up. She ignored it. Climbed up herself, good dress catching on everything. By the time she settled on the wooden bench, her face was hot with frustration and embarrassment. Silas said nothing. He just walked around, climbed up beside her, took the reins. The town watched them leave, still trying. Willa felt their stares like brands on her back, burning, permanent. She'd never be just Willa Brennan again. She was Silas Thorne's wife now, the girl who got bought. Still trying. They rode in silence. The road out of Bitter Creek climbed into the foothills, leaving behind the dusty streets and clapboard buildings. Pine trees crowded close. The air grew cooler. Only sounds were the creak of the wagon wheels and the steady clip-clop of hooves. Willa snuck glances at the man beside her. Silas kept his eyes on the road, his face expressionless. His hands were scarred, rope burns, cuts, the thick calluses of hard labor. He didn't wear a wedding ring. Neither did she. "How far is it?" she finally asked. "Another hour. Do you come to town often?" "No, that was it. Just no. Not no, but I will if you need something." Or no, but we can change that. Just a flat statement of fact. Willa swallowed the dozen questions burning in her throat. What kind of life was waiting for her? What did he expect from her? What happened tonight when the sun went down and they were alone? Stomach twisted. "I should tell you something," Silas said suddenly. She tensed. "What?" "The house isn't fancy. It's clean but it's small. Just 3 rooms. I wasn't prepared for company. I'm not company. I'm your wife." He flinched, still trying. Actually flinched like the word hurt him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess you are." The ranch appeared as they crested a ridge. Willa's breath caught, not from beauty, but from the sheer isolation of it. Still trying. The house sat in a small valley surrounded by barnfart grassland. A barn, a corral, a few outbuildings. That was it. No neighbors, no other houses visible in any direction, just wilderness and sky and a loneliness so complete it had weight. "Welcome home," Silas said, and the words sounded like an apology. Still trying. He helped her down this time. She was too tired to argue, and she stood in the dirt yard while he unhitched the horses. The wind bit through her thin dress. She'd left Bitter Creek with nothing but the clothes on her back. Still trying. Everything else her father would have sold by now. "You coming?" Silas stood by the door. Holding it open, she forced her legs to move. Inside the house was exactly what he'd promised. Small, plain, clean. The main room held a wood stove, a table with 2 chairs, a threadbare sofa that had seen better days. A kitchen area occupied one corner. 2 doors led off the main room. Bedrooms, she assumed. "That one's yours," Silas said, pointing to the door on the left. "I'm on the right." "The lock on your door," he paused. "Inside lock," he clarified, seeing her confusion. "You can bolt it from the inside if you want." Willa stared at him. "Why would you offer that?" "Because you should have a choice." He set her small bag down. And had he grabbed that from the wagon and stepped back. "I know what people think this is. What they think I did. But you're not a prisoner here, Willa. You can lock that door every night if it makes you feel safer." She didn't know what to say. This wasn't what she'd expected. "Not at all. Are you hungry?" he asked. "I don't think I could eat." "All right. I'll make something anyway. In case you change your mind. Your room's got fresh sheets, a quilt, a lamp. There's a creek about 50 yards behind the house if you want to wash up. Privy's out back." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not good at this, at talking, at any of this. But if you need something, tell me. I'll do my best." Then he walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of a strange house, married to a man she didn't know, with a lock on her door and no idea what came next. Willa didn't sleep that night. She lay on the narrow bed, still in her wedding dress, because she had nothing else to wear, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the wind against the walls, the creak of the house settling, Silas moving around in the next room, footsteps, the scrape of a chair, still trying, the soft thud of boots hitting the floor. Then silence. She waited for her door to open, for him to test the lock, to demand his rights as her husband. That's what men did, wasn't it? That's what everyone in town expected. But the door stayed closed, still trying. Hours passed. Moonlight crept across the floor, and slowly Willa began to realize that maybe Silas Thorne meant what he'd said. When dawn light finally spilled through the small window, she heard him moving again. The front door opened and closed. She got up, her body stiff and aching, and peered through her window. Silas was in the corral, working with a young horse, still trying. Methodical, the horse kept shying away, and Silas kept giving it space, never forcing, never rushing, just waiting until the animal decided to trust him. Willa watched for a long time. She emerged from her room around mid-morning, still in her wrinkled wedding dress, her hair a mess. Silas was at the stove, cooking something that smelled like coffee and bacon. He glanced up when she appeared. "Morning, morning, coffee's hot. Food's almost ready." He paused. "You need clothes. I can ride into town tomorrow. See what Mrs. Patterson has at the general store. I don't have money, I can't keep taking from you. You already paid. She stopped. You need clothes, Willa. That's not negotiable, she wanted to argue. But he was right, still trying. She couldn't spend the rest of her life in a yellowed wedding gown. Thank you, she said stiffly. They ate breakfast in awkward silence. The food was simple but good. Bacon, eggs, biscuits that were a little burnt on the bottom but edible. Silas ate quickly, efficiently, like fuel rather than pleasure. What do you do here? Willa asked. All day, I mean, ranch work. Tend the horses, fix fences, maintain the buildings, hunting when we need meat. Firewood for winter, he shrugged. A lot of work for one person. Two now, she heard herself say. He looked up. Surprise flickering across his face. You don't have to. I'm not going to sit around doing nothing. I can work. You ever worked a ranch before? No, but I can learn. Something shifted as his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. All right then. Finish eating and I'll show you around. The ranch was bigger than it looked. Silas walked her through it all. The barn where he kept 6 horses, the chicken coop that desperately needed repair, the vegetable garden that had mostly gone to weeds, the spring-fed creek that provided their water. I let things slide, he admitted. Surveying the overgrown garden, still trying. When you're alone, you focus on what keeps you alive. The rest doesn't seem to matter. It matters now, Willa said. He glanced at her, and for the first time she saw something like hope in his eyes. They worked until sunset. Willa's hands blistered, still trying. Her back ached. The wedding dress was ruined, torn and dirt-stained beyond repair. But as she helped Silas mend a section of fence, passing him nails and holding boards steady, she felt something she hadn't expected. Purpose. Still trying. That night Silas made dinner again. Venison stew with vegetables that were probably from a can. They ate at the small table, and the silence felt less oppressive than before. Why did you do it? Willa asked suddenly. Silas's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. Do what? Pay my father's debt. Marry me. You could have had anyone. Someone who wanted to be here. He set down his spoon carefully. For a long moment he just looked at his hands. Those scarred, capable hands that had been nothing but gentle all day. Still trying. I'm 38 years old, he said finally. I've been alone on this ranch for 2 years. Before that, I worked other people's land, saved every penny, dreamed of having something of my own. Still trying. When I finally bought this place, I had everything I needed. He paused, but it gets quiet, real quiet, and you start thinking maybe you were wrong. Maybe a man wasn't meant to live like this. Just him and the work and the silence. He met her eyes, still trying. I didn't go looking to buy a wife, Willa. I wouldn't do that. But when your father came to me desperate, begging, I saw a way to help someone. And maybe if I was lucky, find some company. Some purpose beyond just surviving. You pitied me. No, still trying. His voice was firm. I respected your situation. There's a difference. She wanted to believe him. God help her, she wanted to believe that this wasn't just another transaction. Another way she'd been used. I won't lie to you, Silas continued. Still trying. I hope that maybe over time we could build something real. But I also know you didn't choose this. So I'm giving you what I can. Time. Space. Safety. What happens after that is up to you. Willa's throat tightened. What if I want to leave? Then you leave. They'll give you money. A horse. Whatever you need. Just like that? Just like that. You're not my property, Willa. I don't care what that paper says. The days fell into a rhythm. Silas left before dawn to work the land. Willa tackled the house, still trying, cleaning years of bachelor's neglect, organizing, making it feel less like a shelter and more like a home. They worked together in the evenings, repairing the chicken coop, weeding the garden, teaching her to ride the gentler horses. Silas was patient, still trying. He showed her how to curry the horses, how to collect eggs without spooking the hens, how to shoot a rifle, just in case. He never touched her beyond the necessary. A hand to steady her when she climbed into the saddle, still trying. A brief class on her shoulder motusha when she did it right, and every night she locked her door. And every night he let her. The weeks passed. Then 3, the town felt like a distant memory. And Willa began to think that maybe she could survive this. Maybe even find some peace in it, still trying. Then one evening, as she cleaned out the small trunk she'd brought from her father's house, she found something tucked beneath her mother's wedding veil. A leather journal, worn. The pages yellowed, her mother's handwriting on the first page. Annie Brennan, still trying. 67. Willa sat on her bed, heart pounding, and opened to a random page. Owen proposed today. Father says it's a good match. Owen has prospects. He's charming. He says he loves me. I said yes. I wonder if I'll regret it. Willa flipped forward, years passing in worn pages. Owen gambles more than I knew. He promised to stop. I want to believe him. The baby came early, a girl. We named her Willa. Owen was drunk when I went into labor. I nearly died. The doctor said there won't be more children. Still trying. Owen lost $300 last night. That was the money for winter supplies. I don't know what we'll do. I'm sick. Lung fever, the doctor says. He gave me a prescription. Owen said we can't afford it right now. He'll get the money soon. Still trying. He never got the money. The entries stopped dated 2 months before her mother died. Willa closed the journal, her hands shaking. On the last page, her mother had written something different. Not a diary entry. A letter, Willa. Reading this, I'm gone. And knowing your father, you're probably in a situation you didn't choose. I married for love. Love didn't pay for bread or medicine. Love didn't stop your father from choosing cards over our family. Love didn't save me. Still trying. Maybe you'll be smarter. Maybe you'll find a man who respects you more than he needs to possess you. Who sees you as a partner, not property. Who gives you the choice I never had. If you do, don't let pride or fear ruin it. Still trying. Better to build something real than steady than to chase passion with someone selfish. I loved your father. It destroyed me. Don't make the same mistake. All my love. Mother Willa sat there until the lamp burned low. Still trying. Then she tucked the journal under her pillow and lay in the dark thinking about choices and respect. And the difference between a man who said he loved you and a man who proved he respected you. Still trying. That night, for the first time in 3 weeks, she fell asleep without locking her door. Still trying. Sunday came with a cold October wind. Silas announced they needed to go to church. Why? Willa asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Because if we don't show up eventually, they'll talk more than they already do. He hesitated. Because you shouldn't have to hide. You didn't do anything wrong. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to stay in their isolated bubble where the world's judgment couldn't reach. But Silas was right. She couldn't hide forever. Still trying. So she wore one of the simple dresses he'd bought her. Plain blue cotton that fit well enough. And they rode into Bitter Creek together. The stairs started before they even tied up the horses. Willa felt them like physical blows, the whispers, still trying, the pointed looks. The way conversations stopped when she passed. Mrs. Calloway actually turned her back. The Miller boys made crude gestures until their mother slapped them quiet. In church, people shifted away from them, still trying, leaving their pew conspicuously empty except for the two of them. Pastor Green's sermon was about redemption and forgiveness. But his eyes kept sliding to Willa. Like she was the sinner who needed saving. She kept her spine straight, her eyes forward, still trying. Silas sat beside her, solid and silent. After the service, people gathered outside to socialize. Willa tried to make for the wagon, but a voice stopped her. Well, Mrs. Thorne. Victoria Merritt stepped into her path. Victoria was the banker's wife, still trying. A woman who'd never worked a day in her life but had opinions about everyone else's choices. Her dress was expensive, her hair perfectly arranged, her smile poisonous. How are you enjoying your new arrangement? Willa stopped. I'm well, thank you. Still trying. I'm sure you are. Must be quite comfortable having all your problems solved with one transaction. The words were designed to cut, and they did. Willa felt the anger rise. Hot and sharp. My problems weren't solved, she said quietly. They were traded for different ones. But at least now, I'm working for my keep instead of watching my father gamble it away. How noble. Victoria's smile widened. Tell me, does it bother you at all? Being bought like livestock? That's enough. Still trying. Silas's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He'd appeared at Willa's side. His face hard. We're leaving. Oh, did I offend? Victoria's eyes glittered. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. That girl's father sold her and you paid the price. Not marriage. It's commerce. You don't know what you're talking about, Silas said, don't I? Everyone knows you paid $2,500. That's not a debt settlement. It was a debt settlement, Silas interrupted. Nothing more, nothing less. Marriage was Willa's choice. Victoria laughed, actually laughed. Her choice? Is that what you tell yourself at night? Willa's hands clenched it into fists. She wanted to scream, to rage, to tear down the smug satisfaction on Victoria's face. But what would that change? These people had already decided who she was. We're leaving, she said quietly, touching Silas's arm. They walked to the wagon in silence, still trying, ignoring the whispers that followed them like flies. Silas helped her up, his jaw tight with barely contained anger, still trying. The ride home was tense. Willa stared at the road, humiliation burning through her veins. She'd known the town would judge her. She just hadn't realized how much it would hurt. I'm sorry, Silas said finally. For what? You didn't say those things. Still trying. For putting you in a position where people can say them. You didn't put me there. My father did. Still, he was quiet for a moment. We don't have to go back. To town, I mean. We can get supplies elsewhere. Or I can go alone and let them think they want. They drove me into hiding? Willa shook her head. No, I won't give them that satisfaction. Something like pride flickered across Silas's face. All right then, but the damage was done. Still trying. That night Willa lay in her room and cried for the first time since the wedding. Not from fear or grief, but from the crushing weight of being reduced to a transaction. A price paid, a problem solved. She heard Silas moving in the next room. Still trying. Heard him pause by her door. He didn't knock, didn't speak. Just stood there for a long moment before his footsteps retreated. The next morning she found a cup of coffee waiting for her, still hot, still trying. A small kindness that said, I know you're hurting and I don't know how to help, but I'm here. It wasn't enough to fix anything, but it was something. They went back to work. The ranch demanded it. There was always another fence to mend, another horse to train, another season to prepare for. And in the work Willa found a strange comfort. Her hands learned the rhythm of ranch life. Her body grew stronger. Her mind slowly began to quiet. Silas taught her to rope, to track, to read the weather in the clouds. He was a good teacher. Patient and thorough, never condescending. When she succeeded, he nodded his approval. When she failed, he showed her how to try again. They talked more, small things at first. Observations about the horses, plans for the garden, still trying. Memories of childhood that didn't hurt too much to share. She spoke slowly, carefully. Like words were a precious resource he'd learned not to waste. I had a sister once, he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Lily was younger than me by 6 years. What happened to her? Fever. She was 12, I was 18. Working a ranch 2 territories over. By the time I got the message and made it home, she was already buried. He stared at the horizon. My parents blamed me. That if I'd been there, if I'd helped instead of running off to chase my own dreams, maybe she would have lived. That's not fair. No. But grief isn't fair. He glanced at her. I left after that. Couldn't stand the way they looked at me. And the next 15 years moving from place to place. Just saving money. Trying to outrun the guilt. Finally bought this land 2 years ago. Thought I'd found peace, he smiled. But it was sad. Turns out you can't outrun yourself. Willa wanted to reach for his hand, to offer comfort. But the gulf between them still felt too wide. The boundaries too uncertain. You're not running anymore, she said instead. No, he agreed. I guess I'm not. Still trying. 3 weeks after the disastrous church visit, Willa woke to a realization. She'd forgotten to lock her door. Not on purpose. She'd just been so tired from working all day that she'd fallen into bed and passed out. And Silas hadn't touched it. Still trying. Hadn't tested the handle. Hadn't done anything except let her sleep in peace. She sat up, looking at the unlocked door, and something inside her chest loosened, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Still trying. That night when she went to bed, she stood in front of the lock for a long moment, her hand on the cold iron. Then she turned away. Left it unlocked, and slept through the night without nightmares for the first time since her mother died. November turned to December. Snow threatened in the clouds. They needed to make one more supply run before winter truly set in. I'll come with you, Willa said when Silas mentioned going to town. You don't have to, I know, but I will. Still trying. They rode into Bitter Creek under gray skies that promised snow. The town was busy with other people doing the same last-minute preparations. Willa kept her head high as they walked into Patterson's general store, refusing to shrink under the stares. Still trying. Mrs. Patterson was civil, but cold. She filled their order efficiently. Barely speaking, as Silas loaded supplies into the wagon, Willa waited on the boardwalk, watching the town move around her like water around a stone. Willa Brennan, she turned, and Carver stood there, a boy she'd known growing up. Now a young man with kind eyes and an uncertain smile. It's Thorne now, she corrected gently. Right, sorry. He shifted his weight. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Still trying. Oh, how people have been treating you. It's not right. The unexpected kindness nearly broke her. Thank you, Finn, if you ever need anything. A friend. Help. Anything. You know where to find me, she nodded, not trusting her voice, then tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Willa with a fragile warmth in her chest. Maybe not everyone had written her off. But that warmth died. We overheard talking near the dress shop. Shameless, really. Parading around like she's a real wife. Well, what else can she do? She made her bed. Or rather, her father made it for her, $2,500. Can you imagine? That's what he paid for her. Like buying a horse, a very expensive horse. The first woman snickered. Willa's face burned. She started toward them, anger blazing, but a hand caught her arm. Don't, Silas said quietly. They're talking about me like I'm not even human, I know. But fighting them won't change their minds. It'll just give them more ammunition. His grip tightened slightly. Come on. Let's go home. Home. Funny how that word had started to mean something. They loaded the last of the supplies and left Bitter Creek behind. Snow started falling as they climbed into the mountains. Fat, lazy flakes that promised a hard winter ahead. Does it bother you? Willa asked. What people say? Silas considered the question. I spent a lot of years caring what people thought. It nearly broke me. So, I came out here where there's nobody to judge except the land and the sky, and they don't care if you're good or bad. Only if you're strong enough to survive, but you're not alone anymore. No, he said, meeting her eyes. I'm not still trying. That night, as they put away supplies, Willa found herself watching Silas. The way he moved, efficient and careful. The way he'd built a life out of nothing. The way he treated her with a respect she'd never known from any man, including her father, still trying. And she thought about her mother's letter. Better to build something real with someone steady than to chase passion with someone selfish. Silas, she said. He looked up from stacking canned goods. Thank you. For what? For the lock on the door. Still trying. For giving me time. For not being what everyone expected you to be. He set down the can in his hand. Willa, I didn't do any of that for thanks. I did it because it was right, I know. But still, they stood there in the small kitchen, snow falling outside, still trying, the wind howling, and something passed between them that wasn't quite words. An understanding maybe, or the beginning of one. That night, Willa wrote in her mother's journal for the first time. Mother, I found your letter. Still trying. I understand now what you were trying to tell me. Silas Thorne is not Willa Brennan. He doesn't say he loves me, but he shows me respect every single day. I don't know if that will be enough, but I'm starting to think it might be more than I ever hoped for. Still trying. You're Willa. She closed the journal, tucked it back under her pillow, and fell asleep with her door unlocked for the second night in a row. Outside, the snow continued to fall, sealing them into their isolated valley. Still trying. Just Willa and Silas in the long Montana winter ahead, and for the first time since the wedding, she wasn't terrified of what came next. She was curious, which felt like progress, or maybe just the beginning of something she didn't have a name for yet. Still trying. Winter hit Montana like a fist. The pass closed 2 days after their supply run, sealing them off from the world. Snow piled high against the house. Temperatures dropped so low that water froze solid in the basin overnight. But the house was warm. Still trying. Silas had stocked plenty of firewood, and they'd prepared as best they could. The days fell into a new rhythm. Indoor work when the weather was too brutal. Outdoor work when it cleared enough to tend the animals. They were trapped together, nowhere to hide from each other. And something strange happened. Willa stopped being afraid. Not all at once, not in some grand moment, just gradually, like ice melting in spring. She'd catch herself laughing at Silas's dry observations about the chicken, still trying. Or he'd smile when she successfully started the temperamental stove on the first try. Small things, but they added up. Tell me about before, she said one night as they sat by the fire. Before the ranch, Silas was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames, worked a lot of places, Texas, Wyoming, even down to New Mexico for a while, saved every penny, slept in bunkhouses with 20 other men, ate beans and hardtack, dreamed about having something that was mine, still trying. What made you choose Montana? The silence. That probably sounds strange, no. I think I understand, and she did, because after 4 months of living in this isolated valley, she'd come to appreciate the quiet, still trying, the way it let you hear your own thoughts, the way it forced you to be honest with yourself, because there was no one else to lie to. What about you? Silas asked. What did you want? Before all this, Willa thought about it. I don't know. Still trying. I never really got to want things. There was school until I was 14. Then mother got sick, then keeping father from destroying everything. I never had time to dream about a future. You have time now, do I? I'm still trapped, just in a different way. Still trying. Are you? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Willa, you can leave when spring comes. If you want to go. I meant that, and go where? Back to Bitter Creek where everyone thinks I'm bought property? Still trying. To another town where I'd be a woman alone with no prospects. She shook her head. There's no freedom for women like me, Silas. Only choices between different cages. Then maybe we build something different here. Not a cage. Something else? Like what? Still trying, I don't know yet. But we have time to figure it out. December gave way to January. Then February, the snow never seemed to stop. Some days Silas had to dig a tunnel just to reach the barn. But inside the house something was growing, still trying. Willa caught herself watch Silas and Silas more, the way he moved, the quiet competence of everything he did, the small kindnesses he offered without expecting anything in return. And he watched her too. She could feel it sometimes, still trying. When she was cooking or mending or reading by lamplight, his gaze on her. Not possessive, not demanding, just noticing, like he was trying to memorize her. To understand this stranger who'd become his wife, still trying. One night a blizzard howled outside so fierce they couldn't see past the windows. Willa sat by the fire mending one of Silas's shirts. The tear in the shoulder had been there for weeks, and he kept saying he'd fix it himself, but he never did. So she fixed it for him, because that's what wives did, wasn't it? Except it didn't feel like obligation. It felt like choice. Which was different, which changed everything. "You look content," Silas said from across the room. She glanced up. "Do I?" "Yeah, thought about it. Thought about the girl who'd stood on those church steps 6 months ago, terrified and furious. That girl felt like a stranger now." "Maybe I am," she admitted. "Is that wrong, given how this started?" "No," Silas said firmly. "You're allowed to be happy, Willa. Even here, even with me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "I'm going to check the horses," Silas said abruptly, standing, still trying. He grabbed his coat and disappeared into the storm before she could respond. Willa sat alone, her heart beating faster than it should. Things were changing, she could feel it. The shift in how she looked at Silas's, how her chest tightened when he smiled, still trying. How she'd started thinking of this place as ours instead of his, it terrified her. Because caring meant risking. And she'd already lost so much. But maybe her mother was right. Maybe building something real with someone steady was worth the risk. Still trying. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and muddy ground. The pass remained closed, but Silas said it would open soon. "A few more weeks," he told her. "Then we'll be able to get to town again." Willa nodded, still trying. But something twisted in her gut. She didn't want to go back to town. Didn't want to face those stares and whispers again. But they needed supplies. And hiding wouldn't change anything. Still trying. One morning in early March, Willa was feeding the chickens when Silas appeared in the doorway of the coop. "I've been thinking," he said. "About the ranch, the business side of it." He shifted his weight. "We could do more than just survive here." Still trying. "We could build something. Breed horses for the copper mines. They need pack animals. Good ones. And we've got the land. The start of a breeding stock." Willa straightened. "That would take capital. I've got some saved. And we could take a loan if needed." "From the bank?" "From Victoria's husband?" Silas grimaced. "There are other banks, in other towns, but this is home." The word slipped out before she could stop it. "Home." Silas's eyes widened slightly. Then something warm crossed his face. "Yeah, it is." There in the chicken coop, surrounded by hay and feathers and the earthy smell of livestock. And Willa felt her heart make a decision her head hadn't caught up to yet. "Thorne and Brennan," she said. "That's what we'd call it. A partnership. Both our names. Thorne and Brennan Livestock." Silas tested the words, then smiled. "I like it. So do I." He held out his hand. She took it. They shook on it like business partners. Except the touch lingered, his calloused palm warm against hers, still trying. And when he finally let go, Willa felt the absence of his hand like a physical thing. The pass opened in late March. They prepared for the trip like soldiers preparing for battle, gathering their list, steeling themselves for confrontation, still trying. But when they rolled into Bitter Creek, something had changed. The town was busy. Spring planting season, everyone restocking after winter, and people were too focused on their own business to pay much attention to the Thornes. A few stares, a few whispers, still trying, but nothing like before. Patterson's general store was packed. They had to wait their turn. That's when Willa heard it. "Did you hear about the church meeting next week?" "Another one? What's it about this time?" "Ultra Green wants to discuss community standards again. Victoria Merritt's been pushing for it." Willa's stomach dropped. "Says there's been too much moral laxity since the Thorne marriage." The woman continued. "Too many wives questioning their husbands. Still trying. Getting Diaz. Well, maybe some husbands need questioning." Another voice said. Willa turned. Mrs. Patterson stood behind the counter, her face set. Maybe if more men treated their wives with respect, there wouldn't be so much laxity to worry about. Other women looked shocked, but a few nodded, including a young woman Willa didn't recognize. She was maybe 20. With auburn hair and bruises on her wrists, she kept trying to hide with her sleeves. Their eyes met, and Willa saw something there. Recognition, fear, Hope, the look of someone drowning who'd just spotted land after they'd loaded their supplies. Willa stood by the wagon, waiting for Silas. The young woman with the bruises approached. Mrs. Thorne? Yes? I'm Ivy. Ivy Carwell, still trying. She glanced around nervously. I heard what you said at the last church meeting about marrying for survival but staying for dignity. You were there? In the back. My husband wouldn't let me sit closer. She swallowed hard. What you said, having choice, about not being property. It made me realize something. What's that I don't have to live like this? Willa's throat tightened. Ivy? What's your husband's name? Dalton. Dalton Carwell. He works at the smithy and, does he hurt you? Ivy's eyes filled with tears. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know that you helped me. Even if I can't do anything about it. You helped me see that I deserve better, Ivy. Still trying. But the girl was already walking away, fast like she was afraid of being seen talking too long. Willa watched her go, her hands shaking. Silas appeared at her elbow. What was that about? Trouble, Willa said. We need to keep an eye on that girl. Still trying. The church meeting happened on a Sunday in early April. Willa and Silas went, because hiding sent the wrong message. And because Willa had a feeling Ivy would be there. She was right. Ivy sat in the back row, next to a big man with a hard face and meaty hands, Dalton Carwell. He had his arm around his wife's shoulders, but it didn't look affectionate. It looked like a cage. Pastor Green stood at the front, looking even more uncomfortable than usual. Thank you all for coming, he began, still trying. We're gathered today because concerns have been raised about the moral direction of our community, about respect for traditional marriage, about the proper roles of husbands and wives. Victoria Merritt stood, perfectly dressed, perfectly quiet, still trying, perfectly righteous. What Pastor Green is trying to say delicately is that we have a problem. She looked directly at Willa. Ever since certain marriages entered this community, marriages based on financial arrangement rather than godly love, still trying, we've seen a decline in wifely obedience, an increase when questioning their husbands, challenging authority. Good, someone said. Everyone turned. Mrs. Patterson stood, her face flushed but determined, still trying. Maybe it's about time women had some questions answered. Maybe if husbands treated wives as partners instead of property, we wouldn't need these meetings. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Victoria's voice rose. This disrespect, this rebellion, still trying. And it started with her. She pointed at Willa. Willa Thorne came to this town as goods exchanged for debt. She should have been grateful for any man willing to take her. Instead, she parades around acting like an equal, like she has rights, still trying. And now other women are following her example. Willa stood, her legs shaking, but her voice steady. You're right about one thing, Mrs. Merritt. I was exchanged for debt. My father sold me to pay what he owed, still trying. And yes, I married Silas Thorne because I had no other choice. She paused, but I stayed because he gave me something no one else ever did. Respect, choice, a lock on my door and the freedom to use it. He could have demanded his rights as my husband, could have treated me as property he'd purchased. But he didn't. She looked around the room. So yes, I act like an equal. Because he treats me like one. And if that's rebellion, then I'm guilty. Still trying. But I'd rather be a rebellious wife with dignity than an obedient one. Without it. The church was silent. Then Ivy Carwell stood. Her husband's hand shot out to grab her, but she stepped into the aisle. Mrs. Thorne is right. Ivy's voice trembled. Still trying. We deserve dignity. We deserve choice. We deserve to be treated like partners, not possessions. Sit down. Dalton growled. No, it was barely a whisper, but it carried through the church like a shout. Dalton stood, his face purple with rage. Still trying. I said sit down, and said no. He grabbed her arm. Silas was on his feet in an instant. Let her go. This is between me and my wife, not anymore. Finn Carver appeared from the side aisle. Let her go, Dalton. Dalton looked around. A dozen men standing now, some nodding, some looking uncertain, but all watching. He released Ivy's arm, threw her away from him. Fine, you want to humiliate yourself, go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've done. Bill stormed out of the church. Ivy stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Willa went to her, put an arm around her shoulders. Come with us, she said quietly. You can stay at the ranch until you figure out what you want to do. I can't just leave my husband. You can, and you should. But where would I go? Anywhere that's not here. Ivy looked up, her eyes red. Would you really take me in? Yes, just like that? Just like that, because Willa knew, still trying, knew what it felt like to be trapped, to have no choices, to think you had to endure the unendurable because there was no alternative. And she'd be damned if she let another woman suffer that way, especially when she could help. Ivy came home with them that day, still trying. She sat in the back of the wagon, her few possessions in a cloth bag. And she didn't say much, just stared at the mountains like she couldn't believe she was really leaving. At the ranch, Willa showed her to the room with the lock. "This was mine," she said, "before I stopped needing it. Now it's yours, the lock's on the inside, always." Ivy started crying again. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay." "You don't have to repay anything. Just rest. Heal, figure out what comes next." Still trying. That night after Ivy had gone, Willa sat on the porch with Silas. "This could get ugly," he said. "I know. Dalton's not going to just let her go. I know that too. Are you sure about this?" Willa looked at him. "Are you?" he smiled. Tired but genuine. Still trying. "Yeah, I am. Then we'll handle whatever comes." What came was worse than they expected. 3 days later, Finn Carver rode to the ranch at dawn. His face was grim. "Dalton's been talking," he said. "Getting other men riled up. Saying you stole his wife. Saying Willa's poisoning the women against their husbands. It's getting dangerous." "What do you mean dangerous?" "I mean he's gathering friends. Talking about coming out here. Taking Ivy back by force." Silas's jaw tightened. "Let him try." "Well, Silas, there could be 5 or 6 of them." You can't fight that many." "I can if I have to." "You won't have to," Willa said. Both men turned to look at her. "Because we're not going to fight them with violence. We're going to fight them with witnesses." He looked at Finn. "How many people in town would stand with us?" "Really stand? Be a dozen." "Why?" "Because when Dalton comes, we're not going to be alone. We're going to have an audience." Still trying. "And he's going to have to decide if he really wants to assault a woman in front of half the town." It was a gamble, but it was the only one they had. 2 days later, the riders came, 6 men on horseback, Dalton Carwell at the head. Still trying. They rode up to the ranch like they owned it. But they weren't alone. Finn had brought Pastor Green and Mrs. Patterson and a dozen townspeople. They stood in the yard, a wall between the house and Dalton's men. "I've come for my wife," Dalton announced, still trying. "She's not your wife anymore," Willa called from the porch. "She's choosing to leave. You need to respect that." "Respect?" Dalton laughed. "You don't know anything about marriage, about duty, about obedience. I know enough to recognize abuse when I see it." "Careful, girl. You're making accusations you can't prove, can't I?" Willa stepped forward, held up Ivy's wrists. The bruises were fading but still visible. "Explain these. Explain why your wife flinches when you raise your hand." Still trying. "Explain why she'd rather live in a stranger's house than go home to her husband." Dalton's face went dark. "Those are lies, they're not." Ivy's voice came from behind Willa. Small but steady, "They're truth, and I'm done pretending they're not." Still trying. She stepped onto the porch, stood next to Willa. "You hurt me, Dalton. For 2 years you've hurt me. And I stayed because I thought I had to. Because that's what wives do. But Mrs. Thorne showed me something different. She showed you rebellion." Still trying. "She showed me dignity." Pastor Green stepped forward. "Dalton, this ends now. Ivy has made her choice. You can accept it with grace, or you can force us to involve the sheriff. But either way, you're leaving without her." Dalton looked around, saw the faces watching him, judging him. His friends were already backing their horses up, clearly having second thoughts. "This isn't over," he spat. Then he wheeled his horse and rode away. His friends followed, still trying. The crowd stayed until the riders disappeared over the ridge. Then slowly they began to leave. A few stopped to speak to Ivy, to offer support, to say they believed her. Mrs. Patterson was the last to go. "You did good today," she told Willa. "Both of you." This town needed to see that. Needed to know there are consequences for hurting women. "Will there be?" Willa asked. "Consequences? Maybe not legal ones. Not yet. But social ones, yes. Dalton Carwell's reputation is ruined. No one will work with him. No one will trust him." That's something, it was. But it wasn't enough. Philip Dawson came to the ranch a week later. He looked uncomfortable. Hat in his hands. "Ivy's filed formal charges," he said. "Assault. Unlawful imprisonment. There's going to be a trial." Ivy stood straighter. "I have to testify?"
"Yes, ma'am."
Still trying. "If you want any chance of conviction, I'll do it." "Ivy, you don't have to." Willa started. "Yes, I do. Because if I don't, then nothing changes. Other women stay trapped. Other men keep hurting. I have to do this." She looked scared, but determined, still trying. And Willa had never been more proud of anyone in her life. The trial was set for August, wife, which gave Dalton's lawyer 2 months to prepare. And he used every day of it. Word spread through the territory, still trying. This wasn't just about one woman leaving one abusive husband. This was about whether women had the right to leave at all. Whether they were people or property. The courtroom was packed on the day of testimony. Every seat filled. still standing along the walls. The whole town had turned out. And not just Bitter Creek, people from neighboring towns. Curious about the trial everyone was talking about. Ivy took the stand in a plain dress, her hands folded, still trying. Her voice shaking but determined. She told everything, the progression of violence, the isolation, the fear. She showed the scars on her arms where Dalton had grabbed her. She described being locked in her own home, being told she was worthless, still trying. Hit for speaking out of turn, the jury listened with stone faces. Dalton's lawyer was a slick man from Helena. Expensive suit, smooth voice. He tore into Ivy on cross-examination, still trying. Isn't it true, Mrs. Carwell, that you've been living at the Thorne Ranch for months now? Yes, in close quarters with Mr. and Mrs. Thorne. Unsupervised, I have my own room, but you're there day and night, observing their unconventional marriage, still trying. A marriage that began as a business arrangement. Isn't it possible their perspective has colored your view of your own marriage? No. My husband's fists colored my view of my marriage, a murmur ran through the courtroom. You claim he hit you, still trying, but you have no witnesses to these alleged incidents, do you? Abusers don't usually invite an audience, so we only have your word. The word of a woman who abandoned her husband and is now seeking revenge. I'm seeking justice. There's a difference. The lawyer smiled thinly. In your opinion, he continued, picking apart her testimony, suggesting she was lying, manipulated, seeking some ulterior benefit, and the jury, 12 men, all husbands, still trying, all with their own ideas about wifely duty and masculine authority. They watched with an expression that gave nothing away. When Ivy stepped down, she was shaking. Willa caught her arm. Steadying her. You did good, she whispered. Will it be enough? Still trying. Neither of them had an answer. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they filed back in, their faces revealed nothing. We, the jury, find the defendant Dalton Carwell guilty of assault. Ivy's shoulders sagged with relief, still trying. Not guilty of unlawful imprisonment. The relief turned to ash. A split verdict, acknowledgement that he'd hit her, but not that he'd trapped her. Dalton would face a fine. Maybe a few weeks in jail, but nothing more. That's it? Ivy asked Sheriff Dawson afterward. He gets a slap on the wrist? It's more than most women get, Dawson said grimly. At least there's a conviction. At least it's on record. It felt hollow. Ivy had been so brave, still trying, had exposed herself to judgment and humiliation, and this was her reward, a partial victory that changed almost nothing. That night back at the ranch, Ivy broke down. I should have known, she sobbed. Should have known they'd never really believe me. Still trying. They believed you enough to convict him of assault, Silas said. That's something. It's not enough. He'll be out in a few weeks, angrier than ever. Then you'll be far from here by then, Willa said gently. Ivy looked up, tears streaming. What? Still trying. We've been making arrangements. Finn has a sister in Portland, Oregon. She runs a boarding house. She's looking for help, and she's willing to take you in. You're sending me away? We're giving you a choice. Stay and fight, still trying. Or start fresh where the past can't reach you. What would do? Willa thought about it. A year ago. I would have run. I would have taken the first escape I could find. But now, I'd probably stay and fight. Because I'm too stubborn to know when to quit. Will smiled sadly. But that's me. You have to decide what's right for you. Ivy was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I want to go to Portland. I want to wake up without being afraid. That's smart, Silas said firmly. Survival isn't cowardice. Still trying. It's just survival. They arranged everything over the next 2 weeks. Train tickets, letters of introduction, enough money to get Ivy settled. Finn agreed to escort her to Oregon, to make sure she arrived safely. Still trying. The morning Ivy left, she hugged Willa so tight it hurt. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for fighting when I couldn't. You fought plenty. You just fought differently than I would have. Still trying. That doesn't make it brave. Write to me, I will. They watched Ivy and Finn ride away toward the train station. And Willa felt the loss acutely. She'd grown to care for the quiet girl who'd found her voice too late to save her first life. Still trying. But just in time to build a second one. You gave her a gift, Silas said, his arm around her shoulders. Hope. A future. That matters. I just wish it had been different. That she could have stayed. That Dalton would have faced real consequences. The world doesn't always work the way it should. But we do what we can, where we can. That has to be enough. In the aftermath of the trial, something unexpected happened. The town's attitude began to shift. Not everyone, not even most people, but enough. Still trying. Women who'd been silent before started speaking up. Mrs. Patterson organized a women's committee, a real one, focused on helping those in difficult situations. 2 more women left abusive husbands that summer, still trying. And the town was forced to reckon with what it had been ignoring for years. Victoria fought it, of course. She railed against the changes, predicted moral collapse, withdrew into bitter isolation. But her power was waning. People were tired of her judgment, but still trying. Tired of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't, still trying. Summer 1899 arrived like a promise kept. 2 years since the wedding. 2 years since Willa had walked down that aisle alone. Terrified, furious, certain her life was ending. She'd been wrong. It had been beginning. The ranch thrived, still trying. Thorne and Brennan Livestock had sold 22 horses to the copper mines that spring. $4,200. More money than Willa had ever seen in her life. More money than her father had gambled away in total. That thought should have hurt. That it felt like freedom. She was feeding the chickens one morning when Silas appeared in the doorway. He had an envelope in his hand, his expression unreadable. "What's that?" she asked. "Open it." She wiped her hands on her apron, took the envelope. Inside was a legal document. Heavy paper, official seals, brought party deed for the ranch. But the names had been changed. Silas Thorne and Willa Brennan. Equal co-owners? Willa stared at it, the words blurring. Her hands started shaking. "Silas, what is this?" "Exactly what it looks like. You can't just give me half the ranch." "I'm not giving you anything. You've earned it. Every acre, every building, every horse." He stepped closer. "This ranch is ours, Willa. Not mine. Ours. I want that official. But why now? Because we've built something real here. And you deserve security that doesn't depend on my goodwill. You deserve to own what you've worked for." He's paused, his eyes searching hers. "Because I love you." Still trying. "And I want you to know you're not here because you have to be. You're here because you choose to be. And if you ever choose to leave, you take half of everything with you." Willa felt her throat close. 2 years ago she'd been property, goods exchanged for debt, worth exactly $2,100. Now she owned land, had her name on a deed, was an equal partner in a thriving business. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come with me to register it. Make it legal." Still trying. She looked up at him, this man who'd given her everything without ever demanding anything in return. This man who'd handed her a locked door and let her decide when to open it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They rode to Bitter Creek that afternoon. Still trying. The county office was a small building near the bank. Dusty, quiet. The clerk barely looked up when they entered, but he looked carefully at the deed when Silas presented it. "Equal ownership," he said, his eyebrows rising. "That's unusual. It's accurate," Willa said, firmly. "I'll need both signatures." Willa signed her name, Willa Brennan, not Thorne. She'd kept her maiden name in the business. A small rebellion that felt significant. The clerk stamped the document, filed it, handed them a copy. "Congratulations, Mrs. Brennan. You're a landowner." The words sounded impossible, but the paper in her hands was real. Outside the office, Willa stopped, stood in the dusty street, feeling the weight of the deed, of what it meant. "You all right?" Silas asked, still trying. "I own land," she said slowly. "I'm 21 years old. And I own land. You do. Women don't own land. You do." She started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity, the impossibility, the sheer audacity of it. And then she was crying, still trying. Silas pulled her close, let her sob into his shirt, right there on Main Street where anyone could see. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you. You don't have to thank me for what's rightfully yours." They were still standing there when a voice interrupted, still trying. "Well, this is the unexpected." Turned. Garrett stood on the boardwalk, her expression unreadable. She was dressed impeccably as always. But something about her had changed. She looked tired, diminished. "Mrs. Merritt," Willa said, wiping her eyes, still trying. "I heard what happened. What you filed." Victoria's gaze went to the deed in Willa's hand. "Equal ownership. How progressive." "It's fair," Silas said. "Fair." Victoria repeated the word like it was foreign. "Yes, I suppose it is." She was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped closer, her voice dropping. "May I speak with you, Mrs. Thorne? Alone?" Willa glanced at Silas. He nodded, stepped back. Victoria gestured to the small park across the street. They walked there in silence, sat on a bench beneath a cottonwood tree. For a long moment Victoria said nothing. Then, "I owe you an apology." Willa blinked. "I'm sorry? I've been cruel to you. From the moment you arrived in this town, I judged you, mocked you, had to make your life difficult." Why? Victoria's laugh was bitter. "Because you something I never did. Choice. I didn't choose to marry Silas. My father arranged it, but you chose to stay. You chose to build a partnership, still trying. You chose dignity over obligation." Victoria looked down at her gloved hands. "I married Sip Merritt when I was 18. It was arranged by our families. He was 35. Wealthy, respected and I've been miserable for 27 years. Admission hung in the air. He's never hit me, Victoria continued. Never raised his voice, but he's never loved me either. I'm a decoration in his house. A hostess for his dinners, a symbol of his status. Nothing more. I'm sorry, don't be. It was my choice to stay. I could have left, could have demanded better, but I was afraid. Afraid of scandal, of poverty, of being alone. She finally met Willa's eyes, so I stayed. And I convinced myself that endurance was virtue. Still trying. That suffering in silence made me noble, and when you came along, refusing to suffer, refusing to be silent, it made me see how cowardly I'd been. You're not a coward. Yes, I am. But maybe it's not too late to be something else. Will Trier reached into her handbag, pulled out an envelope. I've been saving money for 20 years, hiding it from Thomas. I told myself it was for emergencies, but really it was my escape fund. Money to leave if I ever found the courage. Still here. Still trying. She held out the envelope. There's $1,000 in here. I want you to have it, Mrs. Merritt. I can't. Not for you. For the women's fund that Mrs. Patterson is starting to help women like Ivy Carwell. Women who want to leave but don't have the means. Still trying. Willa took the envelope slowly. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'll never use it to leave. I've made my peace with that. But maybe it can help someone else find their courage. This is incredibly generous. It's incredibly selfish. Victoria stood, pulled her skirts. I can't undo my life. But maybe I can help others avoid my mistakes. She started to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, Mrs. Thorne. I think you're very brave, and I hope you build something beautiful here. Then she was gone, still trying, leaving Willa alone on the bench, holding $1,000 and a new understanding of the woman she'd thought was her enemy. Still trying. Late fall came with a vengeance. The cottonwoods turned gold, the air grew sharp, and one afternoon in November a horse stumbled up the road to the ranch. Willa was hanging laundry when she saw it. The rider was hunched over, swaying, clearly drunk. Stomach dropped. She knew that horse, knew that rider. Owen Brennan had come home. Silas, she called. He appeared from the barn, saw the approaching figure. His face went hard. Owen fell off his horse more than dismounted. He stood there swaying, clothes filthy, face unshaven, reeking of whiskey even from 20 feet away. There's my girl, he slurred. Been looking for you. You need to leave, Willa said, her voice flat. That's no way to greet your father. You're not my father. Still trying. You're the man who sold me. Owen's face twisted. I saved you, got you out of poverty, got you a husband. You traded me for gambling money. I paid a debt and pocketed the rest. You told Silas the debt was $4,500. It was $2,100. All from both of us. Owen waved a dismissive hand. Ancient history. I'm here because I need help. Just a loan. To get back on my feet. No, Willa, please. I'm your father. You were my father. She stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists, once, still trying. Before you gambled away Mother's medicine money. Before you watched her die because you chose cards over her life. Before you sold me to pay your debts, I had no choice. You always had a choice. You just kept making the wrong one. Owen's face went red. Ungrateful little. You owe me. I gave you life, and you've been taking from me ever since. Willa's voice was steady now, cold. You took my childhood, my mother, my dignity. You took everything you could, and now you want more. Just a few $100. No, Willa, I'm begging you. And I'm saying no. She looked him straight in the eyes. You sold me to Silas Thorne for $2,100. You lied to him. You lied to me. You gambled away the difference. Still trying. And you let the whole town think I was worth that much to him. That I was expensive property instead of a desperate girl. Owen opened his mouth. Closed it. I owe you nothing, Willa continued. Not money. Not respect. Not even basic kindness. Still trying. You destroyed Mother. You destroyed our family. You destroyed any claim you had to my loyalty. But I'm your father. No. You're a stranger who shares my blood. That's all you've been for years, Willa. Get off our land. Silas's voice cut through the tension. Still tried. And don't come back. Owen looked between them. Saw no weakness. No opening. His shoulders sagged. You'll regret this, he said. But there was no conviction. The only thing I regret is not saying this sooner. Still trying. Willa replied. Owen stumbled back to his horse, managed to drag himself into the saddle. He sat there for a moment, looking down at Willa. For just a second she saw something in his face. Regret maybe, or just self-pity. Then he turned his horse and rode away, still trying. Willa watched until he disappeared over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. Silas caught her, held her up, kept her from collapsing into the dirt. I did it, she gasped. I actually did it. You did? I told him no. You did. I'm free of him. You are still trying. She started shaking, not from cold, from the release of something she'd been carrying for years. The weight of filial obligation. Of trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. He's going to drink himself to death, she said. Probably. He'll care. You shouldn't. That night Willa wrote in her mother's journal. The journal Anne Brennan had left her. The journal she'd been adding to for 2 years now. Mother Owen came today. Asking for money. For help. I told him no. Told him everything I should have said years ago. About the medicine money. About selling me. About choosing himself over everyone else. And then I told him to leave. I thought I'd feel guilty. Or sad. Or something. But I just feel light. Still trying. Like I've been carrying him on my back for years and finally set him down. You were right, Mother. Love didn't save you. And it won't save him. But respect saved me. Silas showed me what that looked like. And now I can't unsee it. Still trying. I hope wherever you are you're proud of the woman I've become. I'm proud of her. Finally, your daughter, Willa. She closed the journal, tucked it back in the drawer, and felt a chapter of her life close with it. Still trying. Spring 1900 arrived with a burst of wildflowers. 3 years the wedding. 3 years since Willa had stood in that church. Certain her life was ending. Instead, she'd built something she never could have imagined. The training facility was complete. Still trying. A proper barn with covered pens for winter work. A viewing area for buyers. Storage for equipment. Everything they needed to run a professional operation. They'd spent 8 months building it. Hired 2 workers from town. Still trying. And financed it with a loan from a bank in Helena. Not Bitter Creek. They'd never give Tomatau power. But before the open house, before the buyers came, there was something more important. A letter had arrived 2 weeks earlier. They're Willa and Silas. I have news. Wonderful news. Robert proposed. We're getting married in June. I never thought I'd want to marry again. After Dalton, I thought I was broken. That I'd never trust another man. But Robert is different. He's patient, kind, still trying. He asks my opinion. He listens when I speak. He reminds me of Silas, actually. In the best way. I'm writing to ask if you'll come to the wedding. I know it's far, and I know you're busy with the ranch. But you're the reason I'm here. Still trying. The reason I'm alive and happy and brave enough to try again. I want you there when I start this new chapter. Please say yes. All my love. Ivy had read the letter 3 times before looking up at Silas. Portland's a long way, it is. The ranch, and survive without us for a week. You want to go? I want to see that girl get her happy end, don't you? Willa smiled. Yeah, I really do. They made the trip in early June, 2 days by train. Still trying. Through mountains and forests and landscapes Willa had never seen. Portland was bigger than she'd expected. Boozier. Full of people and noise and energy. Ivy met them at the station. She looked different, healthier, happier. Her hair was longer. Still trying. Her smile genuine. And when she hugged Willa, she was strong. Not fragile. You came, she breathed. Of course we came. I wasn't sure you would. We wouldn't miss this. The wedding was small. Just family and close friends. Held in a garden behind the boarding house. Ivy wore a simple dress, white with blue flowers. She looked beautiful. Robert was tall. Thin, with kind eyes and gentle hands. When he looked at Ivy, it was with reverence, like she was something precious, something to be cherished, not owned. During the ceremony, Willa felt tears streaming down her face. This girl had been so broken, so terrified, and now she was whole, starting fresh, building something new. At the reception, Ivy pulled Willa aside, still trying. I need to tell you something. What? I'm starting a class. For women. Teaching them skills, bookkeeping, business management. Things that give them independence. Ivy, that's wonderful. It was your idea. Watching you build the ranch. Become a co-owner. Still trying. It made me realize that financial independence is the real freedom. She squeezed Willa's hands. You showed me that. And now I'm going to show other women. Pass it forward. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of me too. Finally, still trying. On the train ride home, Willa stared out, watching the landscape blur past. What are you thinking? Silas asked. That we did something. Something that mattered. We built a ranch. We built more than that. She turned to look at him. Still trying. Ivy's teaching women in Portland. Mrs. Patterson has her committee in Bitter Creek. Victoria donated money to help others. We started something, Silas. A ripple. You started it. I just didn't stand in your way. That's more than most men do. Pulled her close. Then most men are fools. Still trying. They arrived back at the ranch on a warm summer evening. Everything looked the same, but somehow different. Or maybe Willa was different. Maybe after seeing Ivy's new life. After witnessing her triumph. Willa could finally see her own. Still trying. 2 months later, on a crisp morning in August, Willa woke to find Silas already up. She found him in the barn. staring at something in his hands. "What's that?" she asked. He held it up, a newspaper. From Bitter Creek the headline read, "Victoria Merritt dies suddenly at 47. Willa's breath caught. She took the paper. Read the article. Heart attack, in her sleep. No warning. The funeral was tomorrow. We should go, Silas said. Should we? She tried, at the end, to be better, still trying. That deserves acknowledgement. The funeral was well attended, but not well mourned. Thomas Merritt stood at the front, dry-eyed, looking more relieved than grieved. Willa understood then. Victoria had been trapped until death. No escape, no second chance, just endurance until the end. After the service, Willa approached Thomas. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. He looked at her. His eyes empty. "Are you?" "I'm not sure I am." The honesty was shocking. "We had a business arrangement," he continued. "Nothing more. She gave me respectability. I gave her comfort. It was enough for 27 years. Was it enough for her? I doubt it, but she never complained." He walked away. And Willa felt a deep sadness, still trying. For a woman who'd lived her whole life in a cage, who'd seen the door open, seen others walk through it, but never found the courage to step through herself, still trying. The open house was scheduled for a Saturday in May. Willa spent the week preparing, cleaning, organizing, making sure everything was perfect, because this wasn't just a business event, it was proof, still trying. Proof that a girl who'd sold for debt could build an empire. Buyers came from 4 counties, more than 40 people. Ranchers, mine owners, cattle barons. They walked through the facility, examined the horses, asked questions, and Willa answered them, still trying. She knew every animal's bloodline, every training technique, every advantage their breeding program offered. She spoke with confidence, authority, and people listened. One buyer, a gruff man from Butte, looked her up and down, still trying. "You really run this operation?" "I do, both of you?" He glanced at Silas. "Equal partners," Silas confirmed. "Huh." The man chewed his tobacco. "Heard about you. Girl who got bought by her husband." Willa's spine stiffened, still trying. "That's one version of the force. What's the other version?" "The version where I started with nothing, learned every skill I needed, built this business from the ground up, and earned my place as co-owner through work. Not marriage." The man studied her, still trotted slowly. "Fair enough. I'll take 2 of your 3-year-olds. And I'll be back next spring for more." It was the same all day. Questions about her role, about the marriage, about how a woman could possibly run a ranch, still trying. And every time Willa answered with the truth: hard work, partnership, respect. By the end of the day they'd sold 6 horses, and taken orders for 8 more, $12,000 in total, more money than most people saw in a lifetime, still trying. As the last buyer drove away, Willa stood in the center of the training ring, looking around at what they'd built. Silas came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "We did it," he said. "We really did. Proud of you. Proud of us." Stood there as the sun set, painting the mountains pink and gold. And Willa felt something she'd never expected to feel: Khalid, still trying. 3 years after the wedding. Willa was 22, Silas was 41. They sat on the porch of a ranch they owned together, looking out at land they'd made profitable through partnership. And Willa thought about all the versions of herself she'd been, still trying. The terrified girl on the church steps, the angry wife with the locked door, the student learning to rope and ride, the business partner, the landowner, the woman who'd told her father no, the friend who'd saved another woman's life, still trying. At a witness that proved second chances were real. All of these women lived inside her. All of them had necessary to become who she was now. "What are you thinking?" Silas asked. "That I was bought for $2,100. Still trying. "Willa, let me finish." She smiled. "I was bought for $2,100. But I bought myself back, one choice at a time, one skill learned, one boundary set, one fight won." She turned to look at him, and the man who could have owned me, still trying. He chose to stand beside me. Instead, he kissed her, slow and sweet. And when he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "I love you," he said. "In case I haven't mentioned it in the last 5 minutes, I love you too." They sat in comfortable silence, still trying, watching the stars come out. A few weeks later, Willa was in the training pen, working with a wild mare they'd bought from a neighboring ranch. The horse was skittish, afraid someone had broken her spirit before, and now Willa was trying to rebuild it. Slowly, patiently, never forcing, never demanding, just offering trust, and waiting for the horse to accept it. Silas leaned on the fence, watching. "She's starting to come around," he observed. "She is. She just needs time and space." Still trying. "And someone who won't hurt her." Sounds familiar. Willa smiled. "Does it?" The mare took a tentative step forward, then another. until she was close enough for Willa to touch. Willa raised her hand slowly, let the horse sniff it, and gently stroked her neck. "Good girl," she murmured. "You're safe here." "I promise." The mare's eyes softened. Later that evening, as the sun set, Willa and Silas stood at the gate of their property, looking at the sign they'd commissioned, still trying. Hand-carved wood, professional, permanent, it read, "Thorne and Brennan, livestock established, 1898, Eganquil partners." "It's perfect," Willa said. "It is. We should celebrate." "We should," but they didn't move, just stood there, watching the light fade, still trying. Their horses graze, watching the life they'd built together, and Willa thought about all the women who'd been part of this journey. Her mother, who'd warned her about love without respect. Evie, who'd found her courage and passed it forward. Victoria, who'd given what she could, even when she couldn't save herself. All of them connected, all of them part of a larger story, about women finding freedom, one choice at a time. "What are you thinking now?" Silas asked. "That I'm grateful." Still trying. "For what?" "For the locked door. For the time you gave me. For not being what everyone expected you to be." She turned to him. "For showing me that marriage could be partnership. That I didn't have to choose between independence and companionship." Still trying. "You gave me just as much. What did I give you?" "A reason to stop running." "A partner worth building with. A life that matters." I fell over Montana. Stars appeared one by one. Somewhere in Portland, woman taught her first business class to 5 nervous students. And somewhere in Bitter Creek, Mrs. Patterson helped another wife find the courage to leave. Still trying. And somewhere in Helena, a banker's widow donated her entire estate to women's education. All of them connected to this moment, to this partnership, to the choice one terrified girl made to stay instead of run, to build instead of break. Still trying. To become instead of just survive. Willa Brennan had been bought for $2,100. But she'd earned something priceless, her own name on a deed, her own voice in a marriage, her own life on her own terms. And if that wasn't freedom, still trying, then nothing was. She took Silas's hand, laced her fingers through his, and together they walked back to the house, to the home they'd built, to the life they'd chosen, to the legacy they were leaving. One locked door opened, one woman freed, still trying, one choice at a time, until the whole world changed, or at least their corner of it. Which was enough, more than enough. It was everything.